So Sandy, welcome to the stage again. Here we are covering like one of our favorite books, the Book of Joy. And that is in case you have not connected with us, either on Facebook or here live in the sanctuary, that we've been talking about this. This is our third week, is that right? And just to recap a little bit about this, and probably a good idea to get some notes, wouldn't it? That might be helpful. So the first week we were covering just basically what this book was about, why we wanted to talk about it, why we felt it was so important to cover this over a 3-week period. I don't often do that because sometimes I can lose the attention of people. They're like, oh no, she's going to talk about that again. But this one is holding our attention. And so last week was something that we talked about, the obstacles to joy. So just to preface, this book came about because the Dalai Lama invited Desmond Tutu to India to celebrate his birthday. And I want to say, is Desmond Tutu, was he 90 yet? I don't know. Late 80s, right? And the Dalai Lama was turning, 82, somewhere around there. And it was just a remarkable event that happened. They came together, and for 5 days they were followed by the press, interviewers, and it was just, that's what this book is about, their 5 days together. And they covered about what are the obstacles that stop us from experiencing joy. And I look around and I'm telling you, this talk is for all ages, because everybody has obstacles that prevent them from experiencing joy. I'm just going to list those because we talked about it last week. You can look us up on Facebook or you can look us up on YouTube to hear that talk. And Sandy's meditation last week was extremely powerful as well. So the road to joy, the obstacles can be, when do you experience fear, stress, anxiety, frustration, anger, sadness, grief? I'm not only halfway through. And many of you already going, yep. All right, what about despair? What about loneliness, envy, suffering, adversity, illness, fear of death? These are all obvious obstacles that block our joy. But today, we're going to be talking about the last 2 days of their event where they covered the 8 pillars of joy.
We have a slide for that so that you can see, just keep in mind the 8 pillars of joy, which are perspective, humility, humor, acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude, compassion, and generosity. And the first 4 are kind of lumped into the pillars of mind, and the second 4 are the pillars of the heart.
So, I'm going to start you off with a story. A little story that happened yesterday. And my daughter was involved in this story as well. Because there was an organized event down on the river in Loveland, and it was at the Isaac Walton Lodge. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, is the lodge. And they were doing, it was actually a 12-stepper event. All weekend long. That means no alcohol, no drugs, vendors, music, all weekend long. And I kind of wanted to go and see this because my daughter lives in Loveland. So, that's a great excuse to go see the kids, right? And so we decide we're going to ride our bikes. Christy and I and the 2 younger kids are going to ride our bikes to this event. And we do. And it was just really a very cool event. But here was my story I want to tell you. Miles wants to go to the park where the swings are at this Isaac Walton Lodge. And of course, we're going to go. So now that involves everybody's going. And I noticed there are these swings on the various swings, and this one has a particular, like the ring bars for the Olympics, right? And the flat bar, and you can do stunts on it, and of course, that's where Miles wants to go. But there is a kid sitting on top of the structure, the A-frame structure. He's sitting on top there, and he says, wait a minute, I'm the safety engineer. He's telling all these kids, they're not related, except for Miles and Mia. These kids are not related. I'm the safety engineer. I must check everything. And he's pulling on the chains, and he's like, check, check, check. Green light, go. And now the next kid runs, jumps on the bars, and does all these acrobatics things. Here's what I want to tell you. We just listed the obstacles to joy. These kids, every single one of them, had no obstacles to their joy. They were just in joy. And when we go through these pillars, they were doing every single one of these without even knowing it, because kids don't need to even think about this because they haven't got all these blocks at us adults. And even as I look at my teenage grandson out there, and I'm thinking, he's old enough to already experience obstacles from teachers, obstacles from kids, obstacles from parents, from step-parents. There's obstacles in everyone's life. But this particular group of kids were young enough that they still didn't have these obstacles. And the next thing, here comes another kid. He's walking up because he's seeing the kids are having fun. But the safety engineer says from the top, he says, "You can be my assistant safety engineer." Here comes another kid. "You can be my assistant to the assistant safety engineer." So their job was to be on the bottom and pull on the chains to make sure they were safe. Everybody was getting along, taking turns. Why is it? What happens to us?
Well, from the perspective of science.
I love it, Sandy. What a segue.
Because I can't help myself, I'm a science teacher for those 7th grade people. And from the perspective of science, we need to be a little gentle on ourselves, because somewhere between being a kid and being adult during adolescence, our brain actually changes. So not only are we taught things by our parents and teachers and the media, our brain actually changes to be able to plan more for the future and to rely on past experiences more to make those plans and judgment calls. That all happens in the front part of our brains to my 7th grade students during middle school. And so I witness this every day. And what happens is, as adults, that just means that we have to remind ourselves to go back into that childlike perspective to experience the joy. It doesn't mean that we can't. Actually, humans are one of the only animals on the planet that continue to play through adulthood.
We are?
Yes. So lots of times you experience this with your pets because you've had them fixed. And it's just biology. The animals, once they mature, most of them, not all of them, dolphins, other primates, there are other animals that continue to play. But to actually hold the amount of ability to play and imagine that humans have, we are one of the only animals on the planet that can do that. So you are wired for it. You are wired for joy. You are wired to play. And you have to remind yourself. It's just part of our biology. We can't get around it. And so for perspective, living out that first pillar, one of the quotes from the book that I love was, "Change the way we see the world, and in turn, it changes the way we feel and act," which changes the world itself. I'll go back.
Yes. I want to hear that.
So when we change the way we see the world in turn changes the way we feel and act, which then changes the world itself. We are all interdependent. And so everything we do affects everyone else. Just like in the meditation, we can't help ourselves but be connected to the all-ofness. And the way that Buddha says it is, with our minds, we create our world. And through a lot of that is our perception. And the Archbishop talks about, well, we can think how bad or how sad that is, or we can think of the greater opportunity that this allows. We can see something from the past that was bad, and then we can see something good that came from it, to remind ourselves in our current situation that this is even possible. And I love this perspective thing. I got the best ever fortune cookie. And this is all about perspective. It says, the mighty oak is just a little nut that stood its ground.
Oh, yeah. That is good.
So I have, and I'm like, I've never heard a fortune like this ever. And it reminds me of perspective. So I have it taped to my desk to remind me to change my perspective, because it's something I might not be wired to do, but I'm wired for all the good stuff that comes after. And do you want to cut in before I would tell my little story?
No.
Okay, I'm going, right? All right.
I'm ready.
Just making sure. So I want to tone it down to something that really dramatic. One of the very first instances where I truly realized, I always knew this was powerful practice, what really changed my life. And it changed the way I look at perspective. As a teacher, I had a student who was Muslim, and she got caught doing sexual acts with a boy at school. Now, the penalty for this in a very rigid Muslim home is that she would die. Her father was very fundamental, and I was in full sympathy mode when all her aunts and her mother came, and they filled a room, and they were like wailing, almost falling on the floor because they don't know what to do. And I mean, they're talking to the principal and the teachers, and they don't know what to do, and they're afraid that this little girl is going to be killed because of how strongly her father believes in his principles. And I was so angry. And I was angry at myself, because here I am, unity, and I'm supposed to be accepting of all faiths. And I'm having a major struggle right now with a person and his faith. And I took a call with Martha Creek, and she helped me turn this around. Because when I took it from his perspective, and I put myself in his shoes, what if I believed the thought that the rest of my family was going to suffer and be cursed forever if I didn't kill my daughter? What if I thought my wife and my other children? What if I thought my grandchildren? Everyone in my family from this point on was going to be affected by the act of this girl unless he did something so drastically about it. If I believed that thought, who would I be? And for the first time, I could see compassion for this man. I don't even know in that situation what I would do. And so I was able to see it differently and send them all blessings. And we knew she was going to be sent away, and she was. She was sent back to her home country. And a year later, I got an email from this little girl asking for her yearbook. So just the power of the ability to change that perception. That, you know, it really is, he's really human, just like me. He's not evil. And there's nothing to be, instead of being angry, I could have compassion for him and not even realize what that would feel like. My heart just broke for him in that position.
And it wasn't about you agreeing.
No.
Right.
No, it had nothing to do with that. I agreed that that was right.
Right. We can all do this and not feel like we have to stand in that position to make him wrong. Because when you have that compassion, in his culture and his raising, he was doing what he was raised to do. Yeah. Like The Shack, the movie The Shack. Right. Oh, take a breath.
See the power of perspective? It's a really strong thing. We're supposed to go to humility next.
We are?
We are.
Oh, we're going to go in the order they're on that sheet.
Why not? Because it's really humanness, right?
Okay, because humility and humor, I combined those together. And those are my two that were speaking very strongly in this chapter, or in this section, I should say. So, humor and humility. I'm going to start with, humility. Humility in a couple different ways. And I'm going to use just my own story here. We all know what humility is, but when we can live more from humility, from being more humble, we will find more joy. It's when you put yourself up on a pedestal, you literally are putting yourself as a target to be kicked, the stool to kicked out from under you. So many times, and especially you get a minister title, now all of a sudden people put you up here because you're the minister. And I'm not sure what I'm supposed to have as a minister, but I'm supposed to be like the end-all answers for people. And I should have the ability to spiritually ground everybody because I'm the minister. And the Dalai Lama goes into this, and so does Desmond Tutu, about their own. Can you just imagine what the Dalai Lama deals with? His holiness is his title. It's almost like his first name. Many people don't even address him as Dalai Lama. They say, Your Holiness. So how does he keep himself humble? And he says when he first meets someone, he looks them in the eye and he connects human to human. I don't connect to you as Shelley the singer, connecting to Kathy the minister. I'm connecting to Shelley, human being, Kathy, human being. Many times I will say to people, please do not put me on a pedestal, for I will fall off. And when I fall off, will you still walk with me? Because I've disappointed you. It's a setup for disappointments. I'm going to disappoint if I put myself and somebody else puts me up there. So I'll give you a little funny story to connect with humor. Okay, many of you know I was a school bus driver. Oh yeah, 5'2", and the buses were all clutches back then. So I had pillows behind me to be able to do the clutch. And when you start out as a bus driver, most people, you have to start out as a sub, which means you get called at 5 o'clock in the morning, you're on the bus by 5:45, you have a route sheet going where you've never been before, and it's supposed to list all your stops. Well, this time I'm going to drive, I'm driving right over at Jackie's Drive. Right? Oh, yeah, you know that, right? So I'm going to drive over. That's my main section. I'm going to some school I've never heard of, but it's on Coleraine Avenue. I can handle that. So I'm a very strict bus driver. Because I'm 5'2", they already think they can intimidate me. And so I'm very strict. So I pull up, I get the kids, I've got the whole Linus, all that section back there, and they are out of control. Out of control. I pull the bus over and I'm saying, I'm looking in my rearview mirror, I'm not moving this bus till everybody sits down. These little kids all go. I now am on Galbraith Road, and here we go. They're jumping up and down, screaming. I pull the bus over again. I'm like, nobody is going to school until you sit down. I'm looking at them like in the rearview mirror. Here's these little eyes again. Remember, I'm the bus driver. I'm the bus driver. Right? Coleraine Avenue, same thing. I got to pull over again, and I'm almost to their school, which I've never heard of, and I'm like, here we go again. Now I stand up. Now I'm turning, looking at them, and there they go again. I pull up to the school. It's a little school, and there's a teacher there to meet me, and she says, oh, how was everything? How were the kids? I said, here I am. Frankly, ma'am, this was the worst route I've ever driven in my life. These kids were not paying attention at all. And the lady says, did anybody tell you that these kids are hearing and visual, deaf and dumb, as we call it? No. Humility, humor, there's just a few. I got a book on this one.
Perspective. It changed that whole story now, didn't
yes.
it?
Oh my gosh, and then oh gosh, that entails forgiveness, compassion for myself. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, lots of bus driver stories.
So I bet a little acceptance went with that too, right? Had to accept that was how it was at the end and not be too harsh on yourself, right? To see the humor in it after, instead of berating ourselves. And acceptance allows us to move into the fullness of joy and to engage with life on its terms rather than our own. And it's the exact opposite of resignation or defeat. So some people, they don't want to accept things because they see it as a sign of weakness, or that they are resigning and saying that that thing that they're trying to accept is okay. And just like in the story, my original story, I wasn't saying that I thought that thought was okay. And yet I was accepting it and having compassion for the humanness involved if I was truly believing that thought. It says in the book, the Dalai Lama says, we can turn towards the wind and accept this is the storm we must pass through. We cannot succeed by denying what is. And so acceptance allows us to be present with things the way they are. So basically, that's going back to that childhood, that childlike perception of being in the moment instead of back stuck in the past about what something has happened in our past with this, or trying to be fearful about something that might happen because of it. Acceptance allows us just to be present in the situation, just as it is. And then we can be curious sometimes even about what might happen. And this was pretty much my experience with my stepchildren when they were going through addiction. And both of my oldest stepchildren are heroin addicts, and my daughter, she OD'd and died on heroin. And we've been through many rounds of treatment with both of them. And one day, I just decided that I wanted to be connected to both of them, especially my stepdaughter. I wanted to be connected to her much more than I wanted to deal with the shoulding on what she should be doing. And so when I was able to accept that, after changing my perspective and seeing, okay, so how am I addicted in this situation? Like, I was addicted to her, being addicted. It was what I was thinking about all the time. How can I change this? How can I be with her? I just want to be with her, and she's just not there. And so after I changed that perspective and saw her as a human person, just like I'm a human person, I'm just addicted to her thinking and her being as she is addicted to her substances. And I found a little humor in that. And with her, I was able to accept her showing up just as she was, even if she was high. Because if that's what it took for me to be with her in a room because she couldn't not be high, then that's what it took for me to sit down with her and be connected. And what happened was a really deep connection. I thought I needed to go shopping with her and have girl talk with her and, talk about future plans and boyfriends and all these kinds of things. And what it really took was me just having the courage to show up present just the way she was. And when those thoughts occurred to me, this is uncomfortable, that I could be okay in my humanity to know that any human would feel uncomfortable in this situation, and my need to connect with her and be present with her was stronger and deeper. And so that deepened our connection. She started calling me more, and when she finally did make her transition, I felt like I was complete with that. And I actually feel more connected to her now that she's transitioned than I ever felt to her when she was alive.
I want you to just catch, I'm going to just repeat something here that I heard her say that I feel is really important. I asked Suri this morning, or what is it called? Alexa. I said, Alexa, just for fun. Because I'm looking at our notes and I'm like, what is the root of all suffering? What do you think it said? One word. Nope. Attachment. Sandy's story, she was attaching. And how many of us do this? We attach to what we want, what this relationship ought to be, should be, what this friendship, what this child should be. We're hooked on attachment, and all it was doing was bringing her pain. And it wasn't until she moved to the acceptance, and then she was able to be heart to heart, even with her daughter using.
I could do all of those heart things: forgiveness, gratitude, compassion, generosity. All of those things just flowed naturally for me as soon as the acceptance piece came.
What were the kids doing in the playground? All of these. Because they were just accepting each other as whoever. Nobody said, "Who made you this?" The safety engineer. Nobody. Do you have another big story? If you want to cover it on forgiveness, or do you want to save it for another time?
No, forgiveness. I mean, going into forgiveness is such a big thing. And I know people say all the time, forgiving myself is the hardest. And so I have just a little tidbit of that too, going into the forgiveness piece. And it made me think of this after, in the book, there's a story about Anthony Ray Hinton. And I don't know if you remember him. He was on 60 Minutes. He was imprisoned for over 30 years for a murder he did not commit.
He wrote a book called The Sun Still Shines.
The Sun Does Shine.
Does shine.
And during his time in prison, he became the counselor and guide to the other inmates, to the guards there, and to 54 men who were put to death on death row. And he forgave the people that put him there. And he said, "If I'm angry and unforgiving, they will have taken the rest of my life. The world didn't give you your joy." This is a quote from Anthony. He said, "The world didn't give you your joy, and the world can't take it away from you. You let people come into your life and destroy it, but I refuse to let anyone take my joy." And so it made me think about a forgiveness experience for me when I was in college. I had a challenge with a date rape experience. And this led into issues for me all the way up to my marriage, like after I first got married. And it took me changing my perspective. So number one, accepting that this was the case, that it happened regardless of whether I thought it should or not. It happened, so it must have happened for a reason. It happened because it was supposed to happen. I don't know. I had to give that up to acceptance. The humility is that I knew that I had support and love and humanness for other people who had gone through the same thing. I was not alone. It took that kind of support in hearing those stories, but this was the biggest thing. My perspective changed when I had to do a turnaround. Well, I didn't have to. I opened up to the turnaround that I raped me, because he did it once. And I did it in my head to myself over and over and over and over again for years. And I'm pretty sure, looking back at it, he was drunk and he doesn't remember it. I did that to me over and over. And when I realized that it was my thoughts imprisoning me, I was able to immediately forgive him. And then the humanity was in, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. I've heard this story from so many other women, and we're all suffering through this together. I'm a human person. Of course I would feel this way. And I could forgive myself. It's huge. Broke me open, broke my heart open.
How many
Changed
of
my
us
life.
are stuck in that loop? In that loop of still imprisoning ourselves in the story of being angry at someone or something. And I know, boy, we got to bring it to a close. Sandy, how are we going to do this?
Well, I mean, compassion, gratitude, generosity, all those things are natural outflowings of all of the things we just talked about. And so there are things, and actually in the book, there's not a whole lot more about that other than when we practice and have the first part, the rest of it kind of flows naturally. So I think we're doing okay.
I think we're doing okay. I'm going to read this paragraph here because I really marked it as IMP, important for me. Dalai Lama says, I think the only way really is, as we have said, through education. Okay? It says we must promote basic human values, inner values that lie at the heart of we as human beings. The whole summary, as they're concluding this, is about joy is an inside job. You will never find joy out there. You will find happiness in events and happiness in a new outfit or happiness in somebody loves me, new relationship, old relationship, whatever. You can find happiness, but it's fleeting. Joy is eternal. When you can tap into these pillars and when you can identify that we have obstacles and love yourself through them. Don't berate yourself. That was a big thing last week we talked about.
Over and over again, both of them reiterate that joy is a way of being, not an emotion. It's not just one of the other feelings we have. It is a way of being. We can't pursue it. It comes through our daily thoughts and practices, our prayer, our meditation, the actions we take every day, the little things, they all build up. And there is no joy without sorrow. Because sorrow allows us to be in that pain and suffering and lends us the opportunity to be compassionate, to be a friend, to be generous, to forgive. That's how we connect with one another. That's how we know our oneness, our humanity, that we are all human. And the more we turn towards suffering, the more we can turn to joy, because it just raises the volume up for both of those things. And so what we're really called to do is to bring joy to other people. That's the big summary of the book. And they say the key, the true secret, is the more we turn towards someone else to help them in their suffering, the more we can bear our own.
It says that we must teach people, especially our youth, the source of happiness and satisfaction. We must teach them that the ultimate source of happiness is within themselves. Not a machine, not technology, not money, not power. So our book is part of this important process to help spread the message that love, kindness, and affection are the source of joy and happiness. Shall I go ahead? We ready? I'd like to close with the blessing that Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, gave the people at the end of their 5-day event. So I would like to invite you to just close your eyes. Just imagine yourself over in India, 5 days of this celebration and this discussion and this joy and these two elderly men living like they were two little 5-year-olds coming together. And Desmond Tutu was asked, would you please give us a blessing? So this is from Desmond Tutu to all of us. Dear child of God, you are loved with a love that nothing can shake. A love that loved you long before you were created. A love that will be there long after everything has disappeared. You are precious, with a preciousness that is totally, quite immeasurable. And God wants you to be like God, filled with life and goodness and laughter and joy. God is forever pouring out God's whole being from all eternity. and He wants you to flourish. God wants you to be filled with joy and excitement and ever longing to be able to find what is so beautiful in God's creation. The compassion of so many, the caring, the sharing. And God says, please, child, help me. Help me to spread love and laughter and joy and compassion. And you know what, my child? As you do this, hey, presto, you discover joy. Joy which you had not sought comes as a gift, as almost the reward for this non-self regarding caring for others. Thank you. Thank you. With that, I think we need to close, and I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure and honor to always share this pulpit with you, always. Thank you. And I thank back there. This is only able to happen because, as you see, we take that gratitude to the obvious, and then we go further, and we say, there's a sound person back there, Connie Fricking, who has learned the system, which is easy now, and we... Thank you. Video, yes. Cameras, Facebook feed. And Kayla Davis, our newest high school graduate, created the PowerPoint. We have Adam on sound and his now trainee, Donovan Davis, another graduating teen, making this all happen. Yes. So shall we give them, would you like to take that side for a namaste? And yes. I'll take this side for a namaste. That the Christ presence in each and every one of us, the Christ presence in me, truly sees and honors. Christ's presence in each every one of you. Namaste.